Om Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. So we're studying the Bhagavad Gita. We are on the 10th chapter. And Krishna has said, don't worry, I won't sum it up again, what we have been doing. I keep doing that in every class. But basically Krishna is saying that God can be experienced, worshipped in this universe. This universe constitutes the glory of God. Now, Arjuna wants to know, so how do I meditate on God? How do I worship you, Krishna, in this universe? So please give me some details. Show me how. And that's what Krishna is going to do from now on. So we were doing the prayer of Arjuna to Krishna. So very beautiful, sublime language, where he says, you are the transcendent Brahman, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, the holiest of holies. Purusham Shashvatam, you know, that one consciousness, eternal consciousness, divyām, shining, Adi Devam, the first among gods, unborn and yet in all forms, vibhūm, that means in all forms. And then multiple other verses where Arjuna asks for further instruction. We have done these verses. We have done up to 15. And then 16 onwards, we'll read. The prayer continues. Basically, he is praying to Krishna for further instruction. 16th verse. Vaktum arhasyaśheṣheṇa Vaktum arhasyaśheṣheṇa divyā hyātma-vibhūtayaḥ divyā hyātma-vibhūtayaḥ yābhir vibhūtibhir lokān yābhir vibhūtibhir lokān imāṁs tvaṁ vyāpya tiṣhṭhasi imāṁs tvaṁ vyāpya tiṣhṭhasi. Verily, you alone can fully tell about your divine glories, through which, pervading all these worlds, you exist. So you exist pervading all these worlds. You're everywhere, in all these worlds. Just as in every pot, jar made of clay, there's clay. In every wave, there is water. In every golden ornament, there's gold. Therefore, in everything that has come from God, there must be the presence of the divine. So you can tell me in detail without leaving anything out. And we'll see when Krishna starts answering, he says, I won't tell you in detail. There's no end to it. I'll give you the highlights, the main points. What do they call it? The cliff notes. What? The what? TLDR. What's TLDR? The? Oh, the long story short, yeah. Yeah. So Krishna will say that, Arjuna said, tell me everything in detail. I want to know. He says, there is no end to describing it. You're asking me to describe the universe. But I'll tell you the highlights. Arjuna continues. Kathaṁ vidyām ahaṁ yogin, kathaṁ vidyām ahaṁ yogin, tvaṁ sadā parichintayan, keṣhu ca bhāveṣhu, keṣhu ca bhāveṣhu, chintyo bhagavan mayā, bhagavan mayā. In what ways, always thinking of you, O yogin, can I know you? In which particular objects are you to be meditated upon by me? So now Arjuna is excited that, all right, this is easier. Meditation, visualization, all that is pretty difficult. But you're saying here in this world, which I can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, which I'm always dealing with, I can somehow use this to meditate upon God. All right, tell me how. Which are the, how will I meditate? What are your glories here? And in which particular objects can I meditate upon God? The commentator, this particular commentary is Sridhar Swami's commentary. So there he says, introducing the next verse, he says, Tadevam bahirmukhe api chitte tatra tatra vibhūtibhedena tat chintayeva yatha bhavet tatha vistarena kathaya ityaha. Even for extroverted minds, so this is what's going on in Arjuna's thinking. Even if my mind is extroverted, I really cannot focus inwardly. Meditation is difficult. He's already been taught meditation 6th chapter. And now he is happy. All right, so I don't have to close my eyes and stop experiencing the external world and then visualize something internally. All that's pretty difficult. But I can actually open my eyes and see God in this world. That's great. How do I do that? So, bahirmukhe api chitte, this is the commentary by Sridhar Swami. Even when our minds are restless, externalized, thinking about the world, can I use that to think about God, meditate upon God? Teach me how. 18th verse. Vistarenātmano yogam Vistarenātmano yogam vibhūtim ca janardana vibhūtim ca janardana bhūya kathaya triptirhi bhūya kathaya triptirhi shrinvato nasti memritam shrinvato nasti memritam. O Janardana, tell me once more in detail. So again he's asking for detail. And Krishna will turn him down. He says, I can't tell you in detail. Tell me once more in detail about your powers and glories, for I am not satiated by listening to your nectar-like words. So, it is very touching. Tripti, I don't have satisfaction. I want to listen more. Well, you already told me this, but I want to listen more in detail. It's very satisfying. It's like amritam, like nectar, like drinking nectar through the ears. Your words are like nectar. So we study the kathaṁ, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, but the original Bengali is kathaṁ, and the word means your words are like nectar. Amrita, nectar, katha means words. The words of the divinity are like nectar. So when we hear that, from great spiritual masters, their words may be very simple, but they touch your heart. They uplift us and purify us. They may not say much also, but you always want to be. You can't have enough of their presence. And if they're talking, you cannot have enough of what they are talking about. Something inside is eagerly drinking it in. Not for everybody. If you have a little bit of that urge, then you're blessed. Not everybody is. If we have that urge, if we have a spiritual urge, I like reading spiritual books. I like listening to talk about God, spirituality, enlightenment. That's great, actually. That shows our spiritual journey has well and truly begun. That's something we can, don't self-congratulate, but at least be happy about it. It's the blessing, it's the grace of God. A dislike for spiritual talk or that shows a lot of samsara is remaining for us. Nothing. The journey will continue, but the samsara is long and the road is arduous. Sri Ramakrishna. So when he was talking, people would be mesmerized, but then not everybody. So there's this funny story about two friends who had come to listen to him, and he's talking about God. He always did, 18 hours, 20 hours a day. So he's talking about God, and people are sitting around him and listening to him. And one of the friends is getting bored. He's sitting and he whispers to his friend, "How much longer? Can we go now?" And his friend says, "A little longer. Let me hear a little more, just a little more." And this first guy, he can't take it anymore. He says, "I'll go and wait in the boat." So they crossed the river by the boat, and they want to go back to their home. So, all right, I'll wait, but I will not sit here anymore. I'm going to go and wait in the boat. Poor guy, You can't help it. It will take time. It will take time. Without the grace of God, nothing happens. I was reading about, take on the birth of Jesus Christ, and one person, he said, a pastor, he put it very beautifully, that when Mary was expecting Jesus, they went to the inn, and that poor innkeeper turned them away. No room. Imagine how famous that inn would have become. Forever. But he said, no room. And so those who do not have interest in spiritual life, they are basically saying that, no room, no admittance. I don't have time. I don't have, patience, interest in this. I find it boring or tiresome. And Arjuna is just the opposite. He says here, tell me more. And I am not satiated. The more I hear, the more my thirst for this increases. This seems to be the only worthwhile thing. This is like nectar. So this really encourages the speaker, If you tell the speaker, okay, you have told me this earlier, I get it. Get on with it. And then the speaker is no longer motivated. So Krishna is encouraged. So he will tell Arjuna more. The 19th verse. Now Krishna will reply. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha. Hantate kathayishyami. Hantate kathayishyami. Divyā hyātma-vibhūtayaḥ. Divyā hyātma-vibhūtayaḥ. Pradhanyata kuru shrestha. Pradhanyata kuru shrestha. Nastyanto vistarasya me. Nastyanto vistarasya me. So the Blessed Lord said, all right, I will tell you about my principal divine glories, O best of the Kurus, Arjuna. For there is no end to the details of my glories. So you have asked a couple of times about the details, and there is no end to it. And some might go, thank God. He does tend to go on and on. So there are 700 verses and 18 chapters to the Gita. Imagine if he had started in detail on each of his glories. That means basically description of the universe. About that boat story, I'm reminded. Once I was a young monk in our monastery in India, in Belur. And some of our senior monks, they wanted to visit this gentleman who was staying in a senior home in one of the ashrams. His name was Badal Babu, and he was a very senior devotee. I had known him for years and years. Very devoted, very pious elderly gentleman. So in his last years, he spent in a senior home in our ashram near Calcutta, Borisha. Now these senior monks, I won't take the names. 2 or 3 of them are still living, so they're really senior. One of them is the vice president of our order now. One of them has retired from active work, lives in Benares. Another one has passed. So they all knew this gentleman from many, many years ago. So they just wanted to visit him. And a friend of mine, we young monks, so we thought it's wonderful to listen to the conversation among these advanced seekers. So it's really. So we accompanied them just to listen. And so we went to this ashram, and that gentleman came from the senior home, and we had tea together. And of course, when the monks get together and have tea together and devotees, the talk turns either to God or to Brahman, this ultimate reality, either philosophically or devotionally. So, the monk in charge of that senior home, he told the gentleman, well, sir, here is a galaxy of great teachers. Ask all your questions, Oh, not him. Sorry. He had no questions. The elderly gentleman had no questions. He was very devoted. But there was a philosopher who was retired and he was living in that senior home. Very interesting philosopher and one of the most extraordinary people I've met. All his life he doubted whether God existed. But what an intense practice of he was seeking. He was trying to understand whether God exists. I asked him, have you taken initiation? You are so devoted, you know so many monks. He said, wait, I have to first make up my mind whether God exists or not. And that he was doing, trying for 30 years or 40 years. So he was there. And then the monk asked, look, there's so many senior monks present here. So why don't you he asked the philosopher, ask your questions. They will solve your doubts here. So the philosopher asked, what is the practice of ajātavāda? This is the highest, most radical form of non-dualism, of Gaudapada in Mandukya Karika. So it's a difficult question. And we had Swami Mumukshanji, whose name I can take, he has passed. He was a great teacher, very learned old monk. He started answering. But in between, what happened was, and here's the point of the story, one of the monks, he stood up and said, you go on, I'm going to go and sit in the boat. Now, those who don't know the background story, there's no boat anywhere around there. What he meant was he was alluding to the story in our Sri Ramakrishna story. So he's a monk, but he's the most practical monk. He is not into all this airy philosophy. So he says, you can go on, but I'm out. So Krishna is saying, I will give you the highlights, not the glories in detail. Glories, though they are glorious, but in detail they can be pretty tedious. One more story I'll just share with you. I don't think it's entirely relevant, but this I experienced many, many years ago. This was about 2 decades ago. I was invited to give a talk in a village, in a school. And we drove for hours and hours outside Calcutta to reach this remote village. And it's quite an impressive school, actually. Very big school. But it's a village. And so they had their annual function of the school. And all the important people, the glories of the village had been invited. You have to have all of them in detail. You can't exclude anybody there. So all of them were present. And all means, you won't believe it, on the stage, the speakers, there were literally 2 rows of speakers. I would say about 24 speakers. Wouldn't that be intimidating for the audience? No, the audience was a very tough audience. They were all little kids. And so it's very difficult to speak to them. And all throughout all those speeches, they played and yelled and jumped and ran around, and the teachers yelled at them to keep quiet and listen. It was chaos. It was like a circus. And I was the only monk, so I was revered, and I know I had to have the last word, so I was going to be the final speaker. Just imagine my condition. So I have to sit there, listen to 24 speeches before my turn comes. And so there was speech after speech, all the glories. And then we broke for lunch, and we went and had lunch, and we back again promptly to the stage to more speeches until evening came. And that was my time to speak. I was the final speaker. We were all exhausted, the speakers, but the audience was not exhausted. They were kids, they were just having a gala time of it all. And then I was asked to speak, and the headmaster came very respectfully, Swami, please come and give your presidential address. So I stood up to speak, and suddenly, in the middle of this speech, there was a whoosh, a sound, and the stage was covered with smoke. I was taken aback. But there were technicians in front. They said, Swami, speak on, go on speaking. I was thinking, what's happening here? And then I realized I was sort of a stopgap. They were preparing for the evening theatrical performance. Those were special effects. The smoke machine was being tested. I was just supposed to keep the audience seated there. It's really tough when you're speaking and there are all these special effects being tested on the stage. You're talking about Vedanta and Vivekananda, and suddenly I'm speaking to the microphone like this, and suddenly another microphone descended from the stage and came here in front of me. I looked up and suddenly it went away again. And the technician said, keep on speaking, Swami, keep on speaking. So Krishna is not going to let us in for that. He just says, I'll give you the highlights. Pradhanyata. the principal glories which you can meditate upon. Because nasti anta, there is no end to the glories of God. Then he starts, and he starts with the most important. 20th. Aham atma gudakesha, aham atma gudakesha, sarva bhutashaya sthitah, sarva bhutashaya sthitah, aham adishcha madhyam cha, aham adishcha madhyam cha, bhutanam anta eva cha, bhutanam anta eva cha. I am, O Gurakesha, that means Arjuna, the self residing in the minds of all creatures. I am the beginning, the middle, and also the end of all beings. What a beautiful thing, you know. Aham atma Gurakesha, sarva bhutashaya sthitah. I am the reality of all things. The first and most important glory you'd keep in mind, everything that you experience, what they truly are is God. That's why Vivekananda said, never approach anything except as God. What an incredible practice. Never approach anything, anybody, any situation except as God, if you are seeking God. Because he says, I am the reality of all things. Atma means the essence, the self, the reality. Your reality and everybody else's reality and everything else's reality. And everything, from a grain of dust to the cosmos, the quasars out there in deep space, I am. From a rock outside to the subtlest of thoughts and feelings, I am. So I am the essence of everything, the self of everything. And then this word, bhutashaya, he has just translated as in the minds of all beings, antakaraneshu. There's a deeper meaning. Ashaya, the root is shete, to sleep. So this I'm taking from a master who has explained it in this way. I am when you go to sleep. So in your deep sleep, you lose all sense of your individual existence. All of us. We are aware of ourselves now, and we are aware of others, and we are aware of our individuality and our distinction from others. Even in dreams, we are aware of our sentient, conscious being. But in deep sleep, we are not aware of our own existence, nor of the existence of others, anything else, where the subject and object is merged into one, where it is a uniform blankness, no distinction is seen, nothing is there, it seems. And Krishna says, I am there. I am awake when you sleep. There was a song, I should have looked it up. It's a very famous old song, a Christian hymn. It was that Lead Kindly Light, I think. Probably. And is the line there? I vaguely recall that evening is coming. The darkness surrounds us and evening is coming close. And now I lay me down to sleep. And I give you my soul to keep, I think. And if my dear Lord, if I do not awaken again, that in my sleep itself I pass away, then that you take care of me. I've forgotten the words, very beautiful words, that I will remain with you. So it's in a very devotional way it is sung. So, is it Lead Kindly Light or some other song? Children's Prayer, yeah. So I'm going to sleep now. It's not Manhattan, city that never sleeps. In those years, in those centuries, evening there was no electricity. And you had to go to sleep pretty early, finish up and go to sleep. And so I am not there. I am completely shut down. Who takes care of me? Who sustains me? God alone is there who sustains me. Ashaya, in deep sleep, Krishna says, I am awake. I am the consciousness to which deep sleep appears. And if you extend it, it is the same consciousness by which you think of yourself as a waker and you're experiencing the waking world. In dreams, it's the same consciousness. You're not aware you're dreaming. You think of yourself as an individual in a world, strange world of dreams. So, that same consciousness, it lights up your the waker and the waking world, you and whatever you're experiencing. It lights up you, the person in the dream, and your dream world. And it shines in the darkness of deep sleep. That one light I am, Krishna says. So it not only illumines, not only makes possible all experience, but also gives existence. I'm translating the Hindi or Sanskrit, satta spurti. Satta means being. That light gives being, existence. How can consciousness give existence? I think a good example is our dream. In our dreams, how do you know anything? Don't say that you know through your eyes and ears. No, your eyes are closed, your ears are not hearing, and yet in your dreams, in our dreams, we seem to see things and hear things, and we talk and walk. All of that which goes on in a dream, our sense organs and our organs of action, whatever we do in a dream, whatever we know in a dream, actually all of it is being accomplished by only one thing, by the mind itself. Though it seems that I am seeing with eyes and hearing with ears, walking with my legs, all of it is nothing but mind. And it's something we all accept. Yeah, in the dream there was only mind. The mind by itself, without hands and feet, without eyes and ears, it heard, it saw, it walked, it held. That's what happens in a dream. What he is saying, Krishna is saying that not only I am consciousness, but in this waking world also, it is consciousness alone which is accomplishing everything, giving existence to what we think are bodies and minds and people and objects, external object out there. No, there's no out there. Out there and in here, both are appearing to you in consciousness. Just mention, today I had this very interesting conversation with a noted scientist and philosopher, Bernardo Kastrup. And have some of you heard of him? So he is a physicist, an engineer, also brilliant person. And he has been thinking very independently about this whole doctrine of materialism. And he has a book, Why Materialism is Baloney. And he's a scientist. He comes entirely from a scientific perspective. Just one example, what you get from him. For example, in today's world, where materialism is sort of the orthodox doctrine, right? It's all material. The ultimate realities are particles and energy, time and space. And we living beings, these are products, epiphenomenon of certain combinations of matter. And your so-called consciousness and mind also are epiphenomenal, products of matter. You're not fundamental. You are not a fundamental reality of the universe, nor your mind, nor your consciousness. Matter is the fundamental reality. So he says, and when you try to say everything is in consciousness, that sounds crazy. Everything is within consciousness. He reverses it. He says, actually it's materialism which is crazy. What does materialism actually say? If you push it far enough, if you see the implications of materialism are that your universe, whatever you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, whatever you think or you can think, whatever you know, including science, or can know, everything is inside this skull. The universe which you are experiencing now, this universe, this room, not only this room, Manhattan, and America, and the world, and the galaxies and stars, all of them are in your skull. You say, no, it's outside. No. What does materialism say? This body is real, and in this body, in the skull, there is a brain. In the processes of the brain, you are constructing a reality the reality which we all experience. Where is it being experienced? In the brain. So literally, if you take it literally, the experience which you are having of the world, of the universe, is here. It is in a strange sense, it is materialism which implies that the world of our experience is in our skull, inside our skull. It's not idealism. And many such interesting things you can hear from him. So Krishna says, I am that one consciousness in which appears the waker and the waker's world. This one, the dreamer and the dreamer's world, and the deep sleep darkness. And then he says, very poetically, I am the beginning of all things, I am the middle of all things, and I am the end of all things. So this can be understood at two levels. One is, as Krishna has been explaining, everything has come from God. So God is, if you remember this discussion of material cause, just as all clay pots have come from clay, all golden ornaments have come from gold. Come from means they are made of clay. And so at the beginning of the pot is clay, at the beginning of the necklace is gold. But what's there in the middle of the pot, when the pot exists? What's there? Clay. In fact, the pot exists in clay. Think about this language. We may say there is clay in this pot, there is wood in this table. But is that accurate, or is the table in wood? Is there a table and in which wood has been filled? No. It is wood which has been given the form and function and name of a table. Nama Rupa Vyavahara. Similarly, in the middle, it is clay. The beginning, it was a lump of clay when the pot was fashioned. When it is a pot, when it looks like a pot and you call it a pot and you use it as a pot and you store water in it or whatever you do, or put flowers in it, it's still clay. The middle of things is, Krishna says, I am the beginning. God is the beginning from which the universe has come. And I'm the middle of the universe. In the middle, I am alone there. And at the end, where does the clay go? Where does the pot go? When you break a pot, what do you get? Clay. Broken pot. Potsherds. It's actually, there was this minister in India who said, we have to stop pollution. People have tea in the trains and they throw these paper cups and plastic cups everywhere. It looks awful. We should make it, biodegradable. So she started this, what you call matka in India. Yeah. So clay pots, little pots where you can have tea. So if you throw it away also, it will go back to the earth, except it doesn't. One thing should have struck her and all the other brilliant people who came up with this idea. What's the most long-lasting artifact that human beings have found? Wherever you dig up an ancient civilization, what do you come across first? Pots, broken pots. Once it's burnt and put in given a shape, and it doesn't become clay, but still, it's not harmful for the environment, not like plastics or like paper or something. So he says, I am at the beginning. God, as the material cause of the universe, is the beginning of the universe, in the middle of the universe, at the end of the universe. In fact, this is the definition of God. In Brahman, in the Brahma Sutras, the first sutra of the Brahma Sutras is Athato Brahma Jigyasa, hence therefore an inquiry into Brahman. Then the question will come, what is Brahman? Janmadyasya yataha, that from which birth, etc. arise. Those are very cryptic, the sutras. You have to expand them. Birth, etc. from which. That's what it means. So what does it, if you expand it, what does it mean? It means Brahman is that from which this universe appears, in which it exists, and into which it disappears. Asya jagata janmasthiti bhanga yasma tad brahma. What is Brahman? Is that from which the universe appears, which is in the middle when it stays, and when it disappears back, it goes to Brahman. So that's the definition of Brahman. He's saying here, I am the... So in these two verses, these two lines, what a remarkable thing he has done. I am the consciousness, I am your essence. Whether you are awake, or in dreaming, or in deep sleep, I am the awareness which illumines all your experiences. And what about this universe? What you experience, the objective universe, I am that too. When it begins, when it exists, and when it ends, I am that. Here what he has said is, Atman is Brahman. Tattvamasi. He has put them together. If you go a little further, he has not explicitly said that. But he said, I am your reality, I am the reality of this universe also. I am the reality of the subject, I am the reality of the object. This is only the first level. There's a deeper level involved here. What he says, see how deep this can go. What is he saying? How deep the rabbit hole goes. Alice in Wonderland. Ahaṁ ādischa madhyam cha bhūtānam anta eva cha. See, we have this feeling, and a lot of people, yes, at the beginning there was Brahman, and the scriptures tell us that, and every religion says that God was there at the beginning. But now Brahman has appeared as the universe, so it's the universe now. And at the end of the universe, it will be Brahman again. In between, well, you may say there is God everywhere, but basically this is the world. These are people. This is good and that's bad, and this is evolution going from a speck of amoeba to a human being and beyond, whatnot. All of this is happening, and this is the reality where we are at now. Maybe at the beginning it was God. Maybe at the very end of the universe, of the cosmos, it will be Brahman, God, whatever. But right now we have to say that this, Krishna is denying this. The beginning I was. In the end I will be. But in the middle I am the same one who am. There is not one thing that has happened in between. Again, it's remarkable. If there's not one thing that has happened in between, what he is denying is causality. What the whole language of this chapter is causality. The universe is produced from God and dissolves back into God. Pots are produced from clay and dissolves back into clay, hopefully. So, cause is the beginning and effect is pot, or in the case of God and the universe, and at the end it will be clay again, but, or at the end it will be God again. In between, but we have this now. And Krishna says, absolutely not. Just as I was Brahman to begin with, and I am Brahman now, and I'll be Brahman in the end. What you think of as the universe is but mere appearance, light and shadow, name and form. This whole doctrine of Jagat Mithya, the falsity, the illusory presentation, magical presentation of a universe, that's implied here, not explicitly said here. The denial of causality. Where are you getting this, Swami? I'm getting this from cause, and the cause, then the effect, and the effect goes back to the cause. Karana, karya, again karana. Pot, clay, pot, clay again. God, universe, God again, back to God again. But he says, no. It is clay and clay and clay. It is God and God and God, Brahman and Brahman and Brahman. Then what's all this? All this which happened? It didn't. It didn't. Even while it's happening, even while you're experiencing it. It's like, you go to a movie, and all the terrible tragedies which you see, which the hero has to go through, and we weep with the travails of the hero, and we laugh with the successes of the hero, and all of that. But at the same time, we know none of that is really happening. That's what makes it bearable. That's what makes it aesthetic. If it was really happening, we can't enjoy somebody else's tears if you at all thought they were real. A denial of causality. God is present as much here as at the beginning of the universe, as at the end of the universe. The entire universe, the appearance, existence, and disappearance is at a lower level of reality. It's a display, like a magical display. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, the magician alone is true, not the magic. What is the magic? The appearance of this universe, the apparent existence of this universe, and our role in it. Going through lifetime after lifetime of spiritual struggle and hoping to get enlightenment at some long distance in this life or next life. All of that didn't happen. You were Brahman earlier, you are Brahman now, you continue to be Brahman. What a great, great security. What a great, great reassurance. No matter how guilty we feel, how unsatisfied we feel, how unfulfilled we feel, our real nature as infinite existence consciousness bliss is not tarnished. It's not tarnished in the least by anything that we say, do, think, or anything that is happening to us, good or bad or terrible. Remember, I'm not denying the importance of this world, importance of morality. See, all that can have the effect of impeding our spiritual progress and stopping us from becoming enlightened. So if I'm immoral, that will lengthen my spiritual journey. If I'm moral and ethical and try very hard, that will make my spiritual journey faster, that much faster. But in either case, my real nature as Brahman is untouched, ever shining. Even if the sun be covered up with dark clouds, doesn't seem to be present there also. It's still blazing forth as much as it is blazing forth in a bright blue sky. The same sun, though it sometimes seems completely covered up, sometimes seems blazing forth, all the time is actually blazing forth. And that's our real nature. That's what Krishna is saying here today. And again, I can't help but tell you, today in my conversation with a leading scientist and a researcher, and he says, entirely from physics perspective, and what he propounds now, analytic idealism, I must say, none of this has ever happened. Nothing has happened in the midst of everything happening. It's only when you accept time and space, then things can happen. So he said, what is this universe? He said, these are patterns of excitation in consciousness. I objected from an Advaitic perspective, that there can be no excitation in consciousness, it's only in the mind, body, external universe. And he said, yes, Swami, I completely agree with you. But what I said is a concession to language. You must explain it to some language. So and I told him that if you say patterns of excitation in consciousness, the Kashmiri Shaivas will be very happy with you. Because that's what they mean. This universe is the vibration of Shiva, Spanda. Advaitins will say it's more like an appearance or a magic show, or like a film on a screen. Yeah. Then 21, verse number 21. So at any point you want to have an observation, comment, you're free to jump in. Just raise your hand, our volunteers will bring a microphone to you. You can ask your question. Then 21. Adityanam aham Vishnu, Adityanam aham Vishnu, Jyotisham Ravirankshuman, Jyotisham Ravirankshuman, Marichir Marutam Asmi, Marichir Marutam Asmi, Nakshatranam aham Shashi, Nakshatranam aham Shashi. So from this verse onwards till the 40th verse, more or less, 40th or 41st verse, he's now going to give a list of meditations on the glories in nature and in society, in our lives. One sadhu, he counted how many glories are going to be mentioned. I think there's 61. And those are just the highlights. So he's starting now. Of the Adityas, I am Vishnu. Of luminaries, I am the radiant sun. Of the Maruts, I am Marichi. And among constellations, I am the moon. So, among shining beings, among the shining gods, I am Vishnu. Vishnu is the all-pervading Lord who is the creator, not creator, but especially preserver. So somebody was working in environmental, sustainability. It's a big thing now. And I said, this is actually divine work. It's spiritual work. It's the function of Vishnu. Vishnu is the preserver. Somebody asked that, why should God be interested if Brahman is the only reality, whether the universe exists, doesn't matter. Brahman is real and the world is false. True. But all of this is the play of God in order to help us to become enlightened. That's one interpretation. If we need help to become enlightened, if we need this life, then the world has to be preserved. Nature has to be preserved. Civilization has to be preserved. So if you are working for the preservation of nature, of civilization, of society, communities. You are doing God's work. Literally, it's the work of Vishnu. Why has Krishna come? Why do avatars come? Exactly for that, to maintain society and the world. So that's the idea behind Vishnu. And he says, among all the Adityas, there is a concept of the 12 Adityas, but let's just say among the gods, I am Vishnu. Among the shining heavenly objects, I am the sun, the radiant sun, and at night, among the constellations, I am the moon, among the heavenly bodies, shining heavenly bodies. What does that mean? So I'm the sun, I'm not anything else? No, it just means you need something to meditate upon. So here is a particularly glorious manifestation, the sun. Here is a particularly glorious manifestation at night, the moon. And meditate upon God in the form of the moon, in the form of the sun. You might say, how ridiculous is that? The sun is a ball of hydrogen, burning hydrogen, terribly hot. Krishna would be burned to a crisp if he's sitting in the sun. Eknath Ishwaran, he writes a beautiful commentary in his book called The End of Sorrow, 3 volumes. So he gives a beautiful image of the blue-hued Krishna in the middle of, what he says, 13 million degrees centigrade in the middle of the sun, playing his flute. If he plays it a little on a higher note, the sun blazes forth and consumes the inner planets and makes life impossible. It will burn Earth to a cinder. If his notes go a little softer, the sun burns dimmer and all life is frozen out on Earth. So he plays the exact note necessary. You see, that's all poetry, it's not science. But then there is this whole idea, I'm not going to that, but this whole idea of certain universal constants. And this is what cosmologists, they can't really explain. Why is the universe, the certain constants, certain parameters of important variables like the nuclear force and gravitation, these are set at certain values which makes life possible. Why? There could be any number of other variables and there could be a lifeless universe. Why only this particular setting in this huge range? Who selected? How did it happen? Stephen Hawking said, who put the fire in the equations? So I can explain it through equations, but there could have been nothing, or it could have been different. But who puts the fire in the equations? So yes, ahaṁ Vishnu, and I am the sun. Yes, it's a ball of hydrogen, no doubt, but if we are looking at it as one consciousness in which everything appears, then there will be consciousness associated even with the physical, this vast, powerful fusion reaction, which is the sun. You can legitimately think of God associated with the sun. The sun can remind you of God. It's a glory of God. The moon can remind you of God. It's a glory of God, and so on. Let's do a few more. Number 22. Vedanam samavedosmi, Vedanam samavedosmi, Devanamasmi vasava, Devanamasmi vasava, Indriyanam manaschasmi, Indriyanam manaschasmi, Bhutanamasmi chetana, Bhutanamasmi chetana. Of the Vedas, I am the Samaveda. Of the gods, I am Indra. Of the senses, I am the mind. And in beings, I am consciousness. Very interesting. So the 4 Vedas, the collections of these ancient texts, and the basis of Sanatana Dharma, Hinduism, I would say in one sense the basis of Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all the Indic religions which came up at that time. Even if you reject the Vedas, you're still building your religion upon the Vedas in that sense, because it's built around a rejection of certain teachings of the Vedas. So, at the root of this Indic civilization, and again I'll quote Bernardo, today he was saying that many years ago, when I started talking about the importance of consciousness, people said, you are plagiarizing the Upanishads. And I wasn't, because I never read them. So I thought I should read them. This was like decades ago. And he said, when I was reading them, I found they were right. Innocently I was doing it, but I was saying something that the ancient Hindus in the Indus Valley, 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, at least, they had said these things. And he says that it's thrilling to think, how could these ancient people have this sophisticated, nuanced understanding of consciousness and reality? So he says, I'm among the Vedas, he selects the Sama Veda. There's a Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda. Among them, he selects the Sama Veda. Sama Veda is musical, so maybe Krishna likes music. Again, does it mean that he's not the other Vedas? No, there's a thing to be understood. He is the other Vedas, but you can meditate upon me, upon God, as the Sama Veda. When you hear the Sama chanting, think of me. It's a meditation. Devanam asmi vasava. Here it means Indra, the king of the Devatas. So when we go through these glories which Krishna is mentioning, some of them will seem familiar to us. We are all familiar with the sun and the moon, and we have sort of heard of the Vedas. But some of them will be unfamiliar to us. The Rudras, the 12 Adityas. So they were familiar to the Vedic people. And they have passed into disuse or become obsolete in modern Hinduism. So we may have a vague idea of what Krishna is referring to. Indriyanam manaschasmi. Among all the senses, I am the mind. So here is a big debate. Is the mind a sense or not? The traditional conclusion is that the mind is not a sense organ. Sense organs are which contact the world. So eyes are in touch with forms, colors, shapes. The ears are in contact with sound. Nose with fragrance or odor. Tongue with taste. Skin with touch and temperature. But the mind is not directly in contact with an external world. The mind gets its information from the senses. The sensory systems dump their information in the mind. And the mind is an inner sense, so to say, not an external sense. That's why the classical formulation is there are 5 sense organs, human beings, 5 sense organs, and an inner instrument called antakarana, inner instrument. That's what generally we call the mind. Memory, ego, the sense of the intellect, capacity to understand, and the mind itself, mano, buddhi, chitta, ahankara, all of them, they constitute an inner sense, not a sense organ. And another view is, no, there are 6 sense organs, the 5 senses plus mind. And so Krishna seems to favor this, the latter view. He says, among the sense organs, among the organs, I am mind. The mind is the most important of the senses because all the senses report to the mind and the mind makes sense of all of it, the information coming in from the world. Bhutanam asmi chetana. And in all sentient beings I am consciousness. From an Advaitic perspective, what does he mean? This is the reflected consciousness, which makes each individual feel like an individual sentient being, a conscious being. This is what basically consciousness studies people are studying now, trying to understand. And here is the remarkable thing. This is the one thing that cannot be reduced to the body. Again, one aspect of today's discussion was how interesting it is that the new technology, computers, internet, especially AI and robotics, they are able to mimic, replicate every activity of human beings, every aspect of our minds also. Intelligence. For a long time they have been able to defeat grandmasters in chess. Memory. Their memory, even the memory of an ordinary calculator beats us in general. Now creativity, we thought things which computers won't be able to do. Creativity. ChatGPT and all, and there are AIs which draw better than human beings, which are now writing short stories. There was this science fiction magazine, I heard a report, science fiction magazine. So they must have published many stories in the past decades about how computers will replace all of us and all. And they had to shut down. Why? They got so many submissions of short stories, all written by the AI, not by human beings. Now what do they do with that? It could be a publishing revolution. Now people say that, oh, will they be able to write masterpieces? Are most authors today, human authors, writing masterpieces? No. Will they be able to write second-grade novels? Yes, very much so. Which most of literature produced today is. So will text-based AIs be able to write stories? And yes. Twice, I asked ChatGPT to write poems for me about Vivekananda. Came up with beautiful poems, far better than I could have written. Each time a new poem. Every time you give it, it will write another poem for you. You can generate, it might take me days and days to compose a nice, passable poem on Vivekananda. ChatGPT can give you a poem every minute, as long as you are, every time you ask. And all of it will be new. How can you compete? Anyway, so every aspect, and this is what we discussed today with the scientist, every aspect of the human mind is being replicated, and you may say it's not really memory, it's not really intelligence, it's not really creativity. All right, I'll go along with that. It's a mimicking of that, but very powerfully so. However, except one thing, this is what Krishna is saying, the consciousness within us, the capacity to have first-person experience, to feel pain, to see the color red, to hear sound. You might say, we are recording this, so the recording is hearing sound and capturing images. Yes, but it has no internal experience. The camera is not having an experience of seeing and hearing. It is consciousness which does that. And that's also the reflected consciousness, the chidābhāsa. The reflected consciousness which enables us to have the feeling of life itself. This internal feeling all of us are having, all the time. And my question to the scientist was, see, creativity is a complex thing. Intelligence is a complex thing. First person experience is pretty simple. Just the ability to feel, the experience, the mouse is not smart. Deep Blue, the computer program, is smart. But the mouse can feel pain when a cat catches it. Deep Blue can't feel pain or anything else. So the ability to feel something, experience something, that's what consciousness gives us, this reflected consciousness actually. That's what we get. And it's such a simple thing. So my question to the scientist was, shouldn't it have been pretty easy for computer scientists, even before we came up with AI that could have intelligence and creativity and write short stories and whatnot and compose poems, just to feel. Why that can't be done? Not only it cannot be done, the computer scientists, they have no idea at all how to do that. No idea. No idea even how to begin how to do that. So, when we speak about the mind, it has intelligence, it has memory, it has ego conscious, the ego awareness, it has what you call creativity, decision making, and consciousness. No. They are not on the same level. Consciousness, even of the reflected kind, which is chidābhāsa, which Krishna is talking about, is not like the other activities of the mind or the body. So Krishna says here, in all bodies and minds, in all sentient beings, I am that which you directly experience as consciousness. All right. Anybody has a comment? No? Yes, a couple of comments. The person who raised their hand there, 3 comments. So, and then that's all. I won't take any more. And the 2 persons who raised their hands here.
Swamiji, in the analogy of the movie, the universe as the movie, is it fair to say that the spirituality and including morality, devotion, meditation, all of that is basically a journey from identifying yourself with the character to identifying yourself as the movie watcher?
The movie watcher or the screen. See, in the case of the movie, the screen is different and you, the watcher, are different. I'm watching and there is a movie out there. But what Krishna said here is, I am the consciousness in your waking, dreaming, deep sleep, and I am that which appears as the universe, the beginning, middle, and end of that. So, both. So, in the case of the universe, you are the watcher, you are the screen, and you are the movie itself. And morality, and civilization itself, all our progress is moving from not knowing ourselves to knowing ourselves. Or, in fact, today somebody asked, or the scientist asked, is it necessary to consider the world to be false? Or is there another way of dealing with this in Advaita Vedanta? And Vivekananda's formulation is a direct answer. We do not pass from error to truth, but from lower truth to higher truth. The better and better degrees of understanding. So immorality is still true. Evil, it's still a truth. You can't dismiss it as non-existent, as a fiction. But a better fiction would be, a higher fiction, something that is closer to our true nature, would be morality. Vivekananda gave 3 tests of truth. 3 tests. He says, strength, not weakness. That which makes you weak, reject it as poison. Anything, physically, mentally, morally, anything that weakens you, reject it as poison. Intellectually. Second test of truth. He says that anything that makes you selfless is true. That which makes us more selfish is untrue or lower truth. And then third test was unites. Truth, whether in society, in our lives, or in science, that which unites is a higher truth. And that which divides is not true or is a lower truth. So yeah, I'm just repeating what you are saying. The young man here. Raise your hand.
Swamiji, so you said someone who is unkind or malicious has a longer spiritual journey than someone who is loving and kind. But we also said that both are Brahman.
Yes.
The idea of good and bad are also Brahman.
Yes.
And they're indistinguishable / united in Brahman. So why is one's path longer than the other?
One's path is longer than the other, not as Brahman. Brahman is the same. Yeah. So, there are a couple of examples which Vivekananda gave. You can take pictures of the sun from different distances. From here you can take a picture of the sun. From Pluto you can take a picture of the sun. Or you can take a picture of the sun from Mercury, for example. They look very different. In Mercury, if you take a picture, it's vast and filling the sky and blazing. Pluto, it's dim and shining in the distance. And here it's sort of in between. But they're all the same thing. From the perspective of the sun, was it brighter, middle luminescence, or dim? None. It's exactly what it was always. So from the perspective of Brahman, which you are, no change. But what is changing is your reading of yourself. Vivekananda gives multiple examples. So he says, it's like looking at your face in various mediums. You look at your face in a dirty pool of water, then in a clean pool of water, then in a mirror, a glass mirror, then finally maybe a high-grade polished platinum mirror. All of them, your experience will keep changing. But they're all reflections of, and none of them are ultimately true. The truth is here, and it's exactly the same always. So these are different examples which Vivekananda has given. Another example is of a screen. If you make a small hole in a screen, you can see a little bit of what's behind it. And a bigger and bigger hole, more and more of what's behind it will be revealed. But from the perspective of what's behind it, it's still always the same. The change is in the screen. So it'll make a big difference if someone is moral and someone is immoral. Someone is ignorant, someone is knowledgeable. Someone is strong, somebody is weak. The strong, the moral, the knowledgeable, they are closer to a better reflection of Brahman than if I am immoral and weak and unethical and selfish and small. Yeah. So this is a very interesting way of defining morality and ethics. It's a big subject. How do you know what is right and wrong? The whole field of ethics. And so that which takes you closer to your nature, reflects your nature better, is moral. That which distorts your real nature is immoral. This is from an Advaitic perspective. Yes, the last question here.
Hi, my name is Mihir, and the question I have is that you made a commentary on those who listen to spiritual talks, and it's a good path that they're on.
Yeah.
Is it wrong to question spiritual leaders?
No, you must question. So the questioning is of two kinds. One is a skeptical questioning. I know it's all baloney. Not materialism is not baloney. Spirituality is baloney, and I'm here to set you straight. So I've already made up my mind about what you're teaching. It could be Hinduism, Buddhism, whatever it is, or Advaita or whatever. And I've made up my mind. You're wrong. It's all woo-woo. It's, and then the questions are coming from a perspective where you cannot really reply to that because the person has made up his or her mind. There's no answer to that. That kind of question is unhelpful. That's what was always discouraged. But especially, now again, questioning the teacher or the teachings, this differs from the path to path. So in a path like, say, Advaita Vedanta, one must question. The questioning is to understand. If you don't understand, the path of Advaita will not work for you. In the path of yoga, your questioning might be just to clarify points of instruction, but not more than that, because then you have to take those instructions and do it and see for yourself. Our teachers who initiate us into mantra and meditation, often, in general, we have never heard them give detailed talks on the science of mantra. There is a huge science of the mantra, but they don't give detailed talks about that. Instead, what they tell us is, keep doing it, you'll understand. The practice will show you in a much deeper way than it would be if I just give you a lecture on it. So that is the yogic approach. So there is what would you question in the yogic approach? If you are a sincere seeker, there would still be questioning. It's just that if the instructions of the teacher, this meditation and aspects of practice are not clear to me, I would like to clarify. Do I do it this way, that way? What does this mean? What does that mean? That much. There might be a devotional approach where the idea is to cultivate love and faith in God. You cannot start by questioning there. It starts with Shraddha, with absolute acceptance. The existence of God, if you start by questioning it, then the path of devotion is not for you. Luckily in Hinduism, you have a spectrum of other paths. So if you don't accept the existence of God, it doesn't appeal to you, or you question it, no problem. You can still have spirituality. You can have a yogic spirituality. You can have an Advaitic, the Jnani spirituality. These paths are open to you. In the Jnani's path, you must question. Clarity is very important at every step. And it's only through your questions that the teacher can teach. If Arjuna had no questions here, the Gita would be terribly short. Most of the Upanishads, you will see they are dialogues. And the new teaching starts only when there is a question. Yeah, so that's the point. The Buddhists have this terminology. They don't listen like a leaky pot, upside down pot and dirty pot. So leaky pot, an upside down pot is that which does not retain anything. You try to pour water into it, just roll off the sides. So people come, listen. What did you hear? Oh, what do I know? All very high stuff, The second one is the leaky pot. So I come, I listen, and I collect something. I feel I got something. But after some time, it's gone. I got something, but I'm very vague about it now. I have to look into my notes or and look at the YouTube talk again. This leaky pot. The third is a dirty pot. Dirty pot is already there's dirt inside. So whatever you put inside will be polluted. The skeptical approach in the sense that I know this is wrong. Now I'm trying to find out the ways in which this is wrong. Okay, one more little thing I will add here. Something that I've noticed. See, the traditional teachers insisted on Shraddha. And we don't really talk about that too much. Vivekananda gave great importance on Shraddha. Because in our modern approach, it's Shraddha means faith. A kind of deep sense of what this person says and what these texts say is true, but I don't get it yet. But it's true. There is something there. Let me go ahead. Without this, no investigation is possible. You can't sign up for a course in Columbia University if you don't have Shraddha on the syllabus and the text and the teacher. Yeah. If you say it's all wrong, why would you pay thousands of dollars and and go to listen to something that's all wrong? So that kind of Shraddha is very necessary. And that's the least that we talk about. You don't talk about more than that. But much more than that is actually necessary. I'm seeing the many different ways in which the deep Shraddha helps. And the lack of Shraddha obstructs us. 2 examples I'll give you, 2 levels. One level is, I don't have much Shraddha. I mean, Shraddha in the sense of deep feeling of reverence for the teacher and the material. But I'm curious. And I'm excited about this philosophy. The danger of that is, right at the beginning, I don't understand what's going on, but I really like it. It sounds cool. And because it's a matter of understanding, so very soon, I begin to understand. If I really put some effort into it, if I read the books, listen to the talks, think about it, I begin to understand. And then I get a grasp, my own grasp, a foothold on the subject. And immediately, if there's a lack of Shraddha, what will happen is, I will start judging the teacher and the text, start finding faults with, your understanding is not quite right. And let me correct you on this one. You might say, what's wrong with that? No, it's not. It's wrong because the approach with Shraddha would have been, I don't understand what you said. This is my understanding. Could you help me from my understanding to what you have said? It's not only the polite way of approaching, it's the way with Shraddha. Without Shraddha is, I read it, I got it, and this person seems, now my teacher seems to be saying something different, so he's wrong. So it's like there's a story of an elderly person who was passing away and his sons gathered around him. And he said, I have many people who borrowed money from me. And the sons quickly took down the notes. Father, tell us before you pass, whom did you borrow money from? And who borrowed money from you? We need to collect that. And then the father, in the last gasps of his dying breath, he says, and I borrowed money from a few people. I'll just tell you, you have to pay back that. And the younger son asks his elder brother, what's father saying? We'll be ruined. And the elder brother says, this happens, at the point of death, delirium sets in. It's not true. Yeah. So there's lack of Shraddha in the teacher. You wouldn't step up to correct the teacher. Now the teacher lands up in a trouble there, hot water, because now the teacher knows where the student is going wrong and what should be said next. But now the student is not willing to listen anymore. He or she thinks he's got it. Text, they find fault with the text. This must be a misprint. I understood it right. Shankara didn't quite get it. Okay, so that's lack of Shraddha. That's one big problem. One mustn't do that. I see some of the wisdom of the old ways there. I mean, if you go to some of those old classes, some of them are still there. I have seen. There's no question of questioning. There is the class, the teacher comes, you sit, listen, and then go. I'll tell you, Swami Chinmayananda, the founder of the Chinmay mission, he studied under Tapovan Maharaj, a great teacher, but a very traditional teacher. And after the class, every day there will be 2 classes, and then you go back to your cave or hut or whatever, the high Himalayas. So one day, he asked a question, and that master looked at him and said, in Hindi I'll translate, he said, Jaiye Brahmachari ji, manan kijiye. Brahmachari is a novice monk. Go back to your cave or hut, whatever, and reason it out. Think about it. And I'm not going to give you any answer. And at that point, if you say, oh, the teacher's awful, I can't learn here, that's your loss. So that's one way Shraddha operates. It helps you to hold on and keep on inquiring and take the help of the Guru. Otherwise, you lose the help of the teacher. Even the teacher can't help you because you're not willing to take the help anymore. The second level at which Shraddha operates, Vivekananda has said this, and I have heard it from traditional teachers and I'm beginning to see. Shraddha is the shortest way to enlightenment. If I have a deep, unshakable faith in which what the teacher is saying, the teacher says, tvaṁ asi, you are that. It can lead to direct enlightenment. Because I am that reality. It can break through on the sheer power of Shraddha. Ashtavakra, the great non-dualist, he gives a lot of descriptions, a lot of ways, doorways into enlightenment. At one point he says, Shraddhasva tata Shraddhasva matra moham kurushva bho. One way, suppose you don't get any enlightenment, and you don't get any of the arguments, you don't get any of this teachings, if you don't get it, it's not real for you. Forget it, forget the whole thing. Just believe it. Just believe it, just sheer belief. I'm telling you, believe it, you are Brahman. That will lead you to enlightenment. But that requires Shraddha. One sadhu in the Himalayas, he said, I now remember, he said, ये श्रद्धा बहुत बड़ी शक्ति होती है महात्मा जी, हम इसको आजकल के ज़माने में नष्ट कर देते हैं. So this Shraddha, this strong belief in the teachings is a great power which children are born with. And we destroy it systematically. Our whole modern, it's a Nietzschean hermeneutics of suspicion. Not belief. You must question every belief. That's good if it leads you forward. But if it just paralyzes you into everything is wrong, everything is awful, and then that's it. It's awful. No. Anyway, I could say a lot more about this, but this questioning and Shraddha, they go together. So questioning with Shraddha, with faith and with reverence, that helps. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu. Swami Vivekananda says that there are a few for whom the moment it is said that thou art, it is done. In a flash, the world disappears and all that is left is the limitless radiance. But there are few. And then he says, the rest of us must labor through lifetimes of effort